There's something I've been carrying around for a long time. Not a secret, exactly. More like a truth I kept folding smaller and smaller, trying to fit it somewhere inside me where it wouldn't take up too much space, where it wouldn't inconvenience anyone, where it wouldn't make me look like I was too much or too deep or too far gone. But I'm done folding it. Tonight, I'm letting it take up exactly as much space as it deserves. And if that makes me look vulnerable, good. Because I think vulnerability is one of the most honest things a person can offer another human being. And honesty is what this is going to be, from the first word to the last. So if you came here for something casual, something light, something you can scroll past without feeling anything, this probably isn't it. But if you came here because something in your own chest has been quietly aching, because there's someone in your life who matters more than you've ever said out loud, because you've been running from a feeling that keeps catching up with you anyway, then stay. Because this one's for you. Hersicitonoe, the weight of unexpressed feeling. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt completely alone? Not because the people were bad, not because the conversation was boring, but because the one person who would have made that room feel like somewhere worth being wasn't there. I have, more times than I want to admit, and I used to tell myself that was fine. I used to convince myself that needing someone was a kind of weakness, that the mature thing, the strong thing, was to be self-sufficient, to be the person who never really needs anyone, who can always handle it alone, who keeps their emotions neatly tucked away like a organized drawer. I built that version of myself carefully, deliberately, and for a while it worked, until it didn't. Because the truth about suppressing what you feel is that feelings don't actually disappear when you ignore them. They just go underground. They move quietly beneath the surface of your daily life, and you think you've dealt with them, you think you've moved past them. And then, one ordinary Tuesday, something small happens, a song comes on in a coffee shop, you see a place you've been before. A name appears on your phone screen, and everything you thought you'd buried comes rushing back like it never left. Because it never did. And in that moment, you realize the silence was never strength, silence was just postponed honesty, postponed too long. HASSET on TWO. What needing someone actually means. I want to talk about what it means to need someone. Not in the way people use it carelessly. The line not as manipulation, not as the kind of thing you say in a heated moment and take back in the morning. I mean it in the truest, quietest, most real sense of the word. To need someone is not the same as being unable to function without them. I want to be clear about that. I am not broken. I am not asking to be rescued. I am not the kind of person who confuses love with dependency or affection with ownership. But there is a person who the world feel different when they're in it. There is a person whose presence changes the atmosphere of a room, whose voice does something to the tension I carry in my shoulders without even realizing it, whose laugh sounds like something that belongs in a life worth living, and needing that, wanting that, is not weakness. It is one of the most profoundly human things there is. We were not built for isolation. Science will tell you that. Philosophy will tell you that. Every love story ever written, every poem carved into stone, every letter passed secretly under a door, they all say the same thing. We are not meant to go through this alone. And I have spent so long trying to go through it alone. Not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid, afraid of saying something and having it fall into silence, afraid of reaching out and finding nothing to hold, afraid that what I felt was bigger than what the other person felt, and that the gap between those two things would swallow me whole. So, I stayed quiet, I performed independence. I told myself it was better this way, it wasn't. Asixiotechre, the person I'm talking about, let me tell you about this person. Not their name, not the details, because this isn't really about the specifics, it's about the feeling. And if you've ever felt this way about someone, you'll understand exactly what I mean without needing the biography. This person didn't arrive dramatically. There was no cinematic moment, no lightning bolt, no instant where the world went quiet and I knew it was slower than that, quieter. The way morning comes, not all at once but gradually, until you look up and realize the room is completely different from how it was an hour ago. It started with small things. The way they spoke about things they cared about, with this kind of full body investment, like nothing was too small to deserve real attention. The way they listened when I talked, not waiting for their turn, but actually listening. The way they remembered things I'd mentioned weeks ago, things I'd thrown out casually assuming they'd evaporate, but they held on to them. And then one day I realized I was holding on to everything about them too. I was storing up the little things. the offhand comments, the expressions they made when they were thinking, the way their mood changed the whole energy of a conversation. I was cataloging them without meaning to, building this entire internal archive of a person who had somehow become essential to how I understood my own days. That is when I knew. That is when I knew this was not casual. That is not something you do with someone who doesn't matter. You don't memorize people who are just passing through. Your soul doesn't build rooms for temporary residents. CC fo you are. The fear underneath, I said, so why did I say anything? Fear. Plain and simple, and deeply uncomfortable to admit. Fear. Multiple things, if I'm being honest. Fear of ruining something that was already good. Because there is a particular cruelty in love sometimes. The way caring for someone deeply can make you hold back the very thing they deserve to hear, because you're more afraid losing the version of them you have than gaining the version you want. Fear of being wrong about what I felt. Because the mind is very good at rationalizing, at telling you that what feels enormous is actually ordinary, that what you're experiencing is just loneliness looking for a face to attach to, that this isn't real, it's just convenient. I ran that argument against myself many times. I cross-examined my own feelings like a prosecutor who already knows the verdict but keeps looking for a reason to doubt it. And fear, maybe most of all, of not being enough, that is the quiet one. The one that doesn't announce itself loudly, but sits in the corner of every decision you make about love. The voice that says, what if you show them everything and they look at it and find it wanting? What if you are not what they imagined? What if your real self, not the composed, together, got it handled version, but the actual you, with the doubts and the overthinking and the moments of total uncertainty? What if that version is simply not what they were hoping for? That fear is powerful, but I've decided it cannot be in charge anymore, because the cost of letting it run my decisions has become too high. And the cost I'm talking about is not dramatic, it's not some catastrophic loss, it's quieter and in some ways worse. It's the cost of a life lived at arm's length from the things that actually matter, of days that pass pleasantly but without weight, of being fine when fine is not even close to what's possible. I don't want to be fine anymore, I want to be real. Her CCTO 5E. The urgency is not drama, it's truth. I know that when you title something urgent, people assume you're being dramatic. I want to address that directly. This is not drama. Drama is manufactured emotion. Drama is performing feelings for an audience. Drama is the feeling without the truth behind it. This is the opposite of that. This is urgency in the way a clock is urgent. Not because it's screaming, clocks don't scream, but because it keeps moving regardless of whether you're paying attention to it. Because time is not waiting for your confidence to arrive. Because the window of certain moments in life does not stay open indefinitely. I have watched people I love, people I respect, wait thing that needed to be said, and I've watched what happens next. The moment passes. The other person makes a different choice, not out of malice, but simply because they didn't know. They didn't know because no one told them. And the person who didn't tell them spends years afterward turning that silence over and over in their hands, wondering how different things could have been if they'd just spoken. I refuse to become that story. Not because I'm certain of the outcome, I'm not. I cannot promise that saying this leads anywhere beautiful. I cannot guarantee that the feeling is mutual, that the timing is right, that everything works out in the way that makes for a satisfying ending. But I can promise this silence guarantees nothing. And honesty, at minimum, gives something a chance that silence never could. That is the urgency, not desperation, not emergency. Just the simple, clear-eyed understanding that now is better than later, and later is better than never, and never is not something I'm willing to accept. CTI 6, what I'm actually asking for, I want to be clear about something, because I think when people hear, I need you, especially in an emotional context, they sometimes hear a request for something heavy. For someone to carry them, for someone to become responsible for their happiness, for a kind of love that demands and exhausts and takes more than it gives. That is not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is presence, real, honest, chosen presence. I'm asking to be someone you think of not because as I made myself necessary, but because something in you genuinely wants me there. I'm asking for the kind of connection where you don't have to translate yourself, where you don't have to perform a version of who you are that you think who you be better received, where you can sit in silence and it doesn't feel empty but full. I'm asking to be chosen, not by default, not because I'm convenient, not because we're already here and it's easier to stay than to leave, but chosen the way you choose something you genuinely value, deliberately, with full awareness of what you're choosing and why. I'm asking to be let in, Not all the way, not all at once. Love doesn't work like that, and I don't want it to. I want to learn someone. I want the slow revelation of another person, the way they gradually trust you with the parts of themselves they've kept covered. I want to earn that. I want to be the kind of person worth showing up for, not just once, but over and over through the ordinary and the difficult alike. And I'm asking more than anything else to stop pretending. To stop pretending I don't think about you constantly. To stop pretending I don't notice when you seem off and spend the rest of the day quietly hoping you're okay. To stop pretending I can hear your name and feel nothing, when the truth is I feel everything. I'm asking to stop performing indifference to someone I am anything but indifferent toward. A CCTON Civien. The real you is what I want. Here is something I've thought about a lot. We live in a world that rewards polish, that rewards the curated version, the highlight reel, the face you put on when you've had enough sleep and your life feels manageable. And we've all learned to perform that version of ourselves so consistently that sometimes I think we forget there's another one underneath. But I've seen the other one. In small moments, maybe. In an unguarded expression. In the way something said the wrong way landed visibly before you recovered. In the quiet that followed something difficult, where for just a second the composure slipped and something true came through. And that version, the real one, the unedited one, is the one that I am asking to know. Not because flaws are romantic, they're not, necessarily. Not because struggling is beautiful in some performed, aesthetic way, it isn't always. But because real intimacy, the kind that actually sustains people over time, is not built on highlights. It's built on showing up for someone even when the circumstances are not ideal, on being known and still chosen, on letting someone see the complicated parts and watching them stay anyway. I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to be honest. I am asking for your real laugh, not the social one, your real frustration, not the polished version that sounds more acceptable. Your real fears, the ones you don't usually say out loud because they feel too vulnerable or too strange or too much. Because here is what I know: you carry things you don't talk about. Everyone does. But I would rather know what you're actually carrying than be given a carefully managed version of you that leaves me always wondering what's behind it. Trust me enough to be real. That is the thing I'm asking. Sin, EGHT, love without the fantasy. People talk about love like it's supposed to feel like a movie. Like the feeling is supposed to be consistently electric, like every interaction is supposed to be cinematic, like if you're really in love, then nothing is ever difficult and everything is always the right thing at the right time. That is not love. That is a fantasy people construct, but they're afraid that real love, with its silences and misunderstandings and moments where you don't know what to say, won't feel like enough. Real love is quieter than that and deeper. Real love is noticing someone's patterns, understanding why they go quiet in certain situations, knowing what they need before they know how to ask for it. Building something together, not because it's always easy, but because you've both decided the other person is worth the effort even when effort is required. Real love is choosing someone on the days when choosing is easy and on the days when it isn't. Real love is saying the hard thing kindly, rather than swallowing it and letting it become resentment. It's apologizing when you're wrong, not when it's convenient. It's staying in the conversation when the conversation is uncomfortable, rather than changing the subject or disappearing for 3 days. I want that, not the fantasy. The real thing, and I know what the real thing costs. I know it takes honesty when silence would be easier, presence when distance would be more comfortable, patience in the moments when everything in you wants to react. I know all of that. And I'm saying I'm ready. Sesicito Neni, if you doubt your own worth, I want to pause here for a moment. Because I know there's a possibility that somewhere in all of this, you're listening and a quiet part of you is saying, but why? Why? Would someone feel this way about me? What do I have that would make someone think in these terms? I want to speak directly to that part of you. The things you think disqualify you, the edges you consider too sharp, the feelings you think are too intense, the ways you've been told you're too much or not enough. Those are not the truths about you. They are the interpretations of people who were not equipped to hold what you actually are. And what you actually are is this: someone who feels things deeply, someone whose presence genuinely alters the atmosphere of a space, someone who, when they actually care about something, cares with their whole self, which is both beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. That is not a flaw to be corrected. That is a gift that the right person will spend their whole life grateful for. The version of yourself you're most ashamed of, the one that gets too attached, that feels too much, that needs more reassurance than feels socially acceptable. that loves with an intensity that sometimes frightens even you. That version is not the problem. That version, met with the right person, becomes something extraordinary. You are not too much, you are exactly, and someone out there, maybe closer than you think, sees that clearly. Hesitian. 10. The choices. So here's where I land. After all of it, the fear, the silence, the performing, the waiting for a moment that was never going to feel perfectly safe. Here is what I know. I know that some things are worth the risk of saying them out loud. I know that the possibility of being hurt is not a good enough reason to withhold the truth from someone who deserves to hear it. I know that I would rather be honest and uncertain than comfortable and silent. And I know in the way you know things that live in your body rather than just your head, that losing this person by failing to speak would be easily recover from. Not because I can't survive alone, I can, but because there are some people you encounter in a life who are not interchangeable with anyone else, who cannot be replaced by meeting more people, by staying busy, by convincing yourself you're fine. There are people who are specific, who matter in a way that is about them and not just about the category of connection. This person is specific. This person matters in that irreplaceable way. And so I'm choosing to speak, not because I'm guaranteed anything, not because I know how this lands, but because loving someone in silence, while it keeps you safe, also keeps them from knowing what they mean to you. And that feels like a kind of theft from them and from yourself. So I'm not stealing from either of us anymore. OUTRO. Closing thoughts. If you're watching this and there's someone in your life, someone you keep almost texting before talking yourself out of it, someone whose name you still notice in a crowded room before you notice anything else, someone you've convinced yourself you're over, but every once in a while life drops a reminder and you realize you're not over anything, you're just carrying it differently. Say something. Not because the outcome is guaranteed. It isn't, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. Say something because you deserve to be known. Because the person you care about deserves to know. Because a life of swallowed truths is not a life of peace. It is a life of managed longing, and that is exhausting in ways that don't show on the surface but wear on you quietly over years. Say the thing. Make the call. Send the message. Have the conversation that terrifies you. Not because love is always returned in the same measure. Not because honesty always produces the outcome you hoped for, but because you are someone whose feelings are real and valid and worth expressing. Because the story of your life should contain chapters where you were brave enough to say what was true, not only chapters where you were safe enough to say nothing. I need you, 3 words, enormous weight, and worth every bit of vulnerability it takes to say them. I need you, not because I can't live without you, but because life is genuinely better with you in it. Because you matter to me in ways I'm done minimizing. Because the time I've spent pretending otherwise has cost something I want back. And if you're on the other side of that feeling right now, if someone needs you and you know it and you've been uncertain how to respond, let me offer this. Be honest. Be kind. Be present. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know exactly what you want, or exactly what this means, or exactly where it goes. You just have to be real. That's all any of us can offer. And it's enough. It is always enough.